I spoke to a restructuring company recently, and they said around 90% of the cases these could have been resolved.
As another beautiful British summer comes to an end, it's time to reflect and take stock. Who are we kidding? It's been raining most of the time. We had a decent June, but yes, it hasn't been great, has it? But it can be hard to take stock when it's normally business as usual. We carry on with the daily grind. And rightly so. We all love what we do, right? 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 And part of this daily grind or business as usual comes a scrolling of our favourite social channels, looking for note and newsworthy items associated with your industry to expand your knowledge and keep us in the loop. Better way to view this would be wasting our time doom scrolling and thinking, why is everyone living their best life here? Well, don't panic. We've got you covered here. What better way to help you out than to take a look back at the most important construction industry news from this summer and how they are disrupting construction, and more specifically, construction technology. Today, I'm joined by Andrew Curtin, CEO of Construction Wave. Construction Wave provides news and insights into the UK construction industry. Their daily email newsletter covers infrastructure, commercial, residential, regulations, and strategic news. The link, as ever, is in the show notes, so please use it and subscribe. I'm a subscriber. Wake up every morning to that newsletter. Anyway, that's enough of the promo to get a few more subscribers for you. What Construction Wave bring is being constantly curious and always saying it how it is, which is probably why I really, really like the newsletter and the way it comes across. And that's the reason Andrew is on the podcast today, because what we'd like to do is talk about some of the latest news, some of the latest topics, and how that's impacting the industry. But before I do that, two things. Andrew, hello and welcome.
Peter, thanks for having me on. That was a fantastic intro. I think you covered everything. I might steal your dialogue there for future reference. But yeah, delighted to be on, Peter, and very supportive of the good work I see you doing on LinkedIn and other socials. So thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on. We're going to take a look back, as I was saying a little bit earlier. We're going to take a look back at summer news stories and the impact that's having on the industry. My first question to yourself, Andrew, would be, if you were to choose a news story or a topic from the past 3 or 4 months, the major one that's had a massive impact on the industry, which one would that be?
Oof. It's a tough question. I don't know when the release of this podcast is out, but obviously we're only 2 weeks since the unfortunate collapse of Buckingham Group, which was one of many we're seeing in the last few months. So my heart goes out to people involved there. I guess at the start of the summer, and we can define summer maybe later on or whatever, but Henry's was nearly the start of June, I believe, was the first week of June. I think it was the 9th of June, my birthday.
There you go.
So we actually broke that story. I remember it was late in the evening, and it's just engagement. It was just the interest around the story was insane. Obviously, Henry's kind of shot up fairly fast. Went to 400 or 500 million, had projects beginning to get them all over the UK. Massive supply chain, probably 2,000 people working directly or indirectly. I don't know what it was. It was one that really got, massive engagement at the start of the summer. And yeah, that was one that stands out. And obviously it just, I think that and Buckingham Group just recently really kind of hit home. What do you think?
I think that's just been a continuation. Although I did just ask you about the summer, but not just in the summer. It seems to be happening frequently, and the reverberation around the industry must be and is huge, because, like you just said then, from a contractor and a subcontractor perspective, it's not just that particular organization and the people that are closest to it that are impacted. It's probably the other people that are more impacted, that are relying on that major contract for the work.
Completely. I suppose for recent times, it's hard to, um, it's hard to, you know, neglect the fact that there is a war happening and we're off the back of COVID, which is, uh, you know, you know, has increased inflation, and the war doubled down on that. Obviously, Brexit is not making things easier. So, like, the UK economy in general is just being whacked 3 or 4 times in the face all at once. So those factors, like, even like prices, just the price of materials, like British gypsum is probably up over 200%, in prices. So like that figure alone just gives you a staggering outlook of price materials. So that's obviously a huge factor. Um, you know, I talk to a lot of people about this, and it doesn't get covered much, but leadership doesn't gets left out of the media. I find a lot is, there's a lot of nepotism in construction. There's a lot of bums and seats who on boards who are not equipped to be on board. And like, listen, I was never on a construction board, but like I've talked to insolvency firms and I've talked to some of the big companies about this, and they said like there is a serious lack of leadership in the construction. There's really good people, but just sometimes there's people in the wrong seats. And during a good economy, you can get away with that because everything's going well and everything's hunky dory. But in a bad economy, it really does come into fruition. But I spoke to a restructuring company recently, and they said around 90% of the cases these could have been resolved, if they done something earlier. But listen, I don't want to point fingers too much. It's just everything else on top of that is after making into one big mess.
Yeah, absolutely, and it puts people in a tricky position, and it's always those extenuating circumstances that have that major impact that people weren't expecting. The unfortunate fact is that has a reverberation around the industry and affects so many people that I don't think a lot of people understand how many people that will and does affect, unfortunately. But anyway, I don't want to really dwell on that negativity. Give me something positive then. What's been happening that's a positive that we can sing and dance about?
Well, I guess some of the positive things is that there is still lots of work out there. There is still many projects that are going to be completed, and there's still lots of work out there, that contractors and can get their hands on. And I know the unfortunate collapse of the companies we talked about. A lot of those people, like some of them are able to find employment quite fast. There's been big support, and that's I found the industry came together a lot. There's the small bit of ambulance chasing. I won't get me wrong. When the company goes bust, people trying to get their whatever their whatever sales fees or whatever it is. But more than, if you look at the broader scope, it was really genuine support too of people who they weren't looking for anything. They just put their hearts out, and I felt the industry did come together, and then show their sincere wishes. But I think there's lots of work out there. There's you talk to recruiters, they are busy. And I think the last couple of years as well, just dwelling on what you do, Peter, is that the adoption of technology has been increasing, and it has become more of a talking point than it was just 2 years ago. So I think we're still low on the bell curve on that, but I think it's changing quite fast. So I think those are 3 points: is the technology, the amount of projects, and the mobility of labor. You can go into a job quite quick. So the economy depends on construction. So I think there's going to be really, really positive signs as well.
Yeah, on a future podcast, we've got Alex from Build My Talent, and that is the company that Alex has built is looking to build a community around job sharing, and not just job sharing, but CPDs and education and things like that. So it's not just that whole recruitment. But what I'm seeing is there's a lot more tech going into the recruitment space within construction, which is interesting, considering the labor, the age of the labor and the shortages we're seeing and going to see because of people retiring and stuff, it's probably
Mm-hmm.
absolutely primed for that type of technology for the next generation coming into it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, completely. Yeah, it's there's events popping up all over the place and stuff like that. There is a big gap, I think, still between the tech side of the industry and the contracting side of the business. I think I've met some
Yeah.
tech founders. One who stands out most is John Ryan from Simterra. I think John has a great John and Sarah, who own
Yeah.
Simterra. I love their background because they were hands-on. They work with some of the largest contractors and the largest projects around London. They spotted a gap for technology, and they were able to build something from their experience. I find some of the tech companies don't have that hands-on experience, and it comes against them a bit later on.
Yeah,
Because it's like it's a different mindset. You can't like you have to play it in simple terms. It's just like you have to expect the contractors. This is new to them. You have to explain it. You can't come from a developer background, or a software developer background and expect them to know it. It's just not their jam.
Yeah.
So I find there's a small bit of a gap there.
Yeah, I really like what Simterra have done as well, and the way they go about the business, and from a marketing perspective as well, the way they promote themselves. It's a bit rough and ready, I must admit, but I really like where they're going, and for a small company that they do it exceptionally well. So I'm with you on that one.
Yeah. And look, they're startup and it's scrappy, but they have their heart in the right place and they're doing the right things, and that brand will really develop over time. Same with us, like we're a scrappy startup. We're just trying to get through the rounds, and we'll keep building and building. But once we're hands are on a few right buttons, then we're going the right direction. But
yeah, completely agree. One thing that I notice from the newsletter and your website, there's one major project that is always in the news, and it's never really positive, unfortunately. Is HS2. Okay, so
yeah,
for me, my own personal opinion on HS2, right, is that as soon as it was announced, I just thought they're never going to finish it. That was my first thought, like however many years ago. It's never going to happen, and it's probably going to double the cost, right, of whatever they were saying it would cost. What's your take on HS2?
It's a hard one. It's a hard one, really. I'd say one thing for our articles. We do try and be very positive where we can, but just at the moment there is just very certain things around the HS2. It's a massive project. It's affecting everyone, and there is mistakes being made left, right, and center. And I said, you cannot report on it. Like you just can't ignore it. It has to be reported on because it's affecting hundreds of thousands of people. Being honest, the HS2, I don't know. I've mixed opinions. Like the idea is great. The execution is poor. Like, just be completely honest, and like you've seen that with the resignation of Mark Thurston, the CEO, and I hate seeing that. Like, you just want it to be a good project that can benefit everyone. Supply chain. If it goes well, it works better for everyone. From media to waste management companies to everyone around the periphery and inside it. But yeah, there has been lots of mismanagement. It's fair to say, like. Even I don't know. I find what's been done before is kind of one of the industry's weaknesses. Is like, they set up the HS2 group or the HS2 Limited to manage the contractors and everything involved in it, and the people in there. I've known people in there. They're not getting paid as much as other industry or other companies or private company. So I think the incentive alignment is a bit off there. Sometimes is it just better to give the whole project to a massive private company and they just bang it out? rather than having an extra layer of bureaucracy, and then people will come back and just say, "Oh no, it has to be done this way and that way." And I find, okay, does it really have to be doing that? So I don't know. I just think there's a lot of bureaucratic layers that were added in that could have been much simpler. Like the country want it done, and they want it done cost effectively. Everyone wants it done. So I don't know. I think there's a lot to be said just to hand it to a big company and crack on with it.
Yeah, and you look at previous live projects, the Elizabeth line, for example, and the let me get this right, the Tideways. Is it Tideways?
Yeah, Tideway, the London one.
Yeah, Tideways, and you look at both of them, and I know the Elizabeth line went majorly over in terms of timeline and expense, and I think Tideways has. And it always surprises me when the main person that's in charge leaves their position. It never really, it rings alarm bells for me, really, when that happens.
Those project organizations, or whatever you call them, I'm not the biggest. I don't know. I personally think, yeah, there might be a small need for little, but these are massive, very bloated type organizations, on top of working with massive contractors. So I don't know. I think there's something has to be done to reduce there and just have maybe an executive team. But there'll be lots of people just say, "Oh, it can't be done that way. It can't be done that way," and I'll keep saying, "Why not?" But yeah, they're all going over budget. All of them are going over budget. That mightn't always be their fault either. There's just other unforeseen circumstances.
So final thing then, I'll kind of pass the baton over to you on this one, if you don't mind. This is supposed to be like a recap of the summer news and the like. So is there any news stories that stick with you that you've either enjoyed, are important, made you laugh, cry, smile, worry throughout the summer months?
I think what I find what's really interesting at the moment is, and I'll give a shout out to Rory Butler, who's heading up our editorial and currently hiring another journalist. Is he's keeping close eye on the growth of RSK. So RSK, for any listeners, their group or holding company, and they're buying up. I think they have, I don't know how many it was. There's 20 acquisitions this year, but they're buying up, facility management companies, engineering companies, and different parts of the sector. So they're one ecosystem nearly, and if you have a project, then loads of companies in their portfolio can work on it. Everyone gains. But I'm just saying, the growth of that company is just insane. They're just, after nearly 20 acquisitions this year, and they've just a large array of services. But I'll go onto their website, RSK Grouper, and then have a look at all the different companies, and they're nearly buying companies weekly. So I find the founder, Alan Ryder, I think his name is, I find him really interesting. He's the type of guy I'd love to be at a dinner table with, because his ambition, and construction is a very fragmented industry, and he's obviously trying to consolidate it into one ecosystem. So I think it's a fascinating story. We'd love to get him on a webinar or something, and have a Q&A with them, because hats off to those guys. They're doing really well. Their company, I would actually, you could nearly do a full podcast alone breaking down their acquisition strategy. Peter, we should do it later on. It could be interesting to your listeners, just breaking down this.
Absolutely.
Because it's such a hard industry for acquisitions too. It's just not easy. It's much more, other businesses have more simple ones. It's just a tough one. But any other stories that stick out? I think that's the one, because we're tracking it so much and we're so interested in it, and readers seem to be quite interested in it.
Let's finish then on Construction Wave, and what we spoke about the summer, but what does the future look like for yourselves?
Yeah, a couple of things really is, we want to keep expanding our editorial, and there's so much to cover. If I could afford it, I'd have 10 journalists on the desk just covering the news we need to know every day. And yeah, we definitely want to grow beyond one publication. We feel there's
Mhm.
gaps in the industry that we can narrow down in a bit more. At the moment, it's large contracting, main contracting, or large main contracting, subcontracting. I suppose it's a big few months for us because with all the insolvencies, and this is the first time I'm saying it, at all the insolvencies and the financial problems at the moment, we're launching our construction CFO summit on the 13th of November. Um, so if you go to our website and the events page, you'll be able to see a bit more information.
Nice.
And we have CFOs, CEOs, like bankers, all 400-person C-suite event, and we're just going through some of the key financial issues because it's very secretive industry. It's the way things are. The financial aspect, especially, we just need to get a bit more clarity on how we can avoid, you know, more insolvencies. What are the new payment strategies and technologies we can use? You know, um, even stuff we're going to be talking about is the financial operations. Is that, like, are we attracting the right financial people to work at construction organizations? Are we
Mm.
are we doing those types of things? So yeah, the summit's a massive one for us. As I said to you, I've no mind saying, I've no problem saying it aloud. It's a make or break one for us because it's gonna really transform us to the next level if we can pull it off, and plant the seed in people's minds that we're a publication for the future.
Nice one, Andrew. I think I'm rooting for you, and I think most of the industry will be rooting for you to pull it off. So, yeah, good luck with that, and I know you'll make it a success, which is fantastic.
And
Um,
and Peter, you asked me a question. Let me ask you one.
for sure.
What's your positive positive thoughts or recap over the last few months or the future ahead?
Yeah, I think my positive thoughts are why I'm doing this podcast and why I've started a marketing agency based in construction technology. Because when that technology they get it right, and when organizations buy into it, they see the benefit of it. And there's multiple case studies for some really interesting tech out there where and you can actually see it in real life happening and helping, and it's just a really positive space to be in, knowing
Mm-hmm.
that that tech exists and knowing that it can help organizations. Yeah, there are issues, there are challenges, as we know, within construction, and there are challenges to getting that tech implemented and up and running, for
Mm-hmm.
particularly for smaller organizations. But the positivity around construction and technology, and where they both meet, is I think a really interesting space to be in. And you mentioned Simterra, and there are multiple organizations which I'm a huge fan of, which are doing amazing work right now.
Yeah, oh, completely. There's so many good companies, and I'm fascinated by them. I'm always on the lookout for good tech companies, out of curiosity and sometimes self-interest, because tech companies are always contacting us about potential advertising stuff. But I just find it, I just find it, I'm just being completely honest, but like I just find it interesting too as well. Some of these companies, like, they're not someone we probably work with just for their own circumstances, but like I just enjoy what they're doing. There's
Mm,
some interesting one comes up around supply chain, but I think from a media aspect, the contact, some people don't like contact yet, but I'm going to call it contact because you're calling it contact, Peter.
yeah.
Um, but from a media point of view, it's so in its infancy. It's very hard to cover. I think it'll be interesting in the next 10 years when, like, CEOs of tech companies are changing positions and there's reshuffles, and I just think from a media point of view, for readers, like, I think there's a bit of a gap between, like, do I need to know reshuffling in a tech company, or do I need to know more about it from a contracting side? It's an
Yeah.
interesting dynamic, but I think we're on the right side of the bell curve.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple of companies that have run reports, created reports, and done surveys and things like that. And whether it's in their better interest, whether it's slightly skewed, who knows? But some of the insights are quite interesting. in terms of where that tech is and the gaps in the marketplace and what is actually happening on site, bridging that gap between the office and the, well, in layman's terms, the computer to the on-site and the build is fundamentally critical, and bridging that gap, getting that, is massively important.
Completely.
Fantastic. Andrew, I'll let you go now. Thank you so much for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thanks a million, Peter, and best of luck in the podcast, and I'll be listening in. So thanks for having me on.